This is my post-mortem for my latest game, Nest. I've written quite a lot of blogs and recorded a few video logs, and I'll just quickly go through them and just repeat the most important or most interesting things I've learned. Our game actually didn't change too much, surprisingly. If we go through the first presentation, the gameplay is still exactly the same. I was going to cut a lot of stuff very recently, but I managed to get the GUI and the feedback communicating just enough so that players could learn to play. One thing that didn't work out so great, I don't think I'll be using the word procedural for another 4-week student project again. I don't think you should either. Although Jacob and I are fairly clever, it was just too difficult in the time frame we had to program level design. When you hand place things, it's a lot easier to space things out and balance it for the gameplay, but procedurally generating, there's just so much programming to do and tweak in order to get things working nicely. You just can't get the level of control that you would get from hand placing in a few weeks, no matter how good you are. 4-week project, unless it's really simple and the game's all about proc gen, don't do it. Well, at least think very carefully about it. This was good, however. This screenshot here was just an environment I threw together with some free props from the asset store, and I hacked together some shaders. This I showed to the audio and animation students that I was hoping to recruit, and it worked really well. People were really inspired. I just said, like, I've already done this, like, don't worry about me making the game pretty because it's already happened, so let's put some stuff in it. I think that actually, I'm sure that helped inspire the animation audio students, because that feedback I got, that I seemed to be on top of things, and they were confident that my passion would get this project done. Another thing that worked really well was having heaps of references for art and audio. Here's something that didn't work very well. I asked Jacob early on if he wanted to use Hack and Plan, or if he wanted to use a spreadsheet for task management. He preferred the spreadsheet because it's more accessible, but at different stages we were both really slack with updating this. I made all of the tasks. I was hoping to have a to-do list and have everyone make their own tasks, but that didn't happen. So in the end, I was probably the most slack here, updating my own tasks. But in the past, I've been on top of Hack and Plan every day. I've never failed to log Hack and Plan tasks. So I'll probably use that in the future for myself. But the asset lists seem to work for the collaborators, the interdiscipline collaborators. It's just, I think everyone needs to be gently reminded to update that stuff. Even at the very least, it's really inspiring to see the other people working on the project logging things as done. It really inspires you to continue, to keep at it if other people are. So I had my school exhibition last night, Synergy, and I went and talked to a couple of the animators. One of them I hadn't met yet, Aiden Ranger. All of our communication was on Discord, sharing images and inspiring each other, like I said, to continue working. He let me know that he actually looked at the material that I shared, the GDC presentations in regards to modeling the style that we were going for, and that was really cool. I mean, his low poly work was amazing. It looked so good for such a tiny vert count. And he even admitted that he hasn't done a lot of it before, but with material I shared that helped me was incredibly useful. So even if a lot of people tend to shy away from taking tips and suggestions seriously, don't stop trying. The more stuff you share in regards to the research you've done surrounding any of the concepts of your game, the more like on the same page everyone's going to be. This is my production blog. I wrote about halfway through the project, just about how difficult it was to randomly generate things, how much work it ended up being, how much work it took away from doing real level design. Here's an artifact that you get when you have a day-night cycle, so the light source is moving below the horizon, and you're using a few different post effects. This was fixed by disabling multi-sampling anti-aliasing on the camera. So you can use the full screen anti-aliasing post effects feature instead of multi-sampling anti-aliasing. It doesn't look as good, but if you want your game to be all pretty at the moment, that's what you have to do, or really test the crap out of it and move your lights around and make sure that there's no funny angles that are going to do this kind of thing. This was another mid-production video I did. After I did a ton of drawings, I have a couple here trying to share the gameplay, and then I was trying to design some nice instructions, which I'll show you in a bit. But the bottom line of recording this video is just mapping out what I want to do in the gameplay with a diagram was incredibly helpful for me to visualize it, to make it real, because at this point I was really unsure about how I was going to get any kind of meaning out of respawning as different kinds of birds when you feed the nest and interact with it. So I'm going to do more of this, and it was a lot of fun just to turn off the computer and draw for a few hours and just imagine. So playtesting. Playtesting is something that I really failed on this trimester, mostly because I had work in the first half of the classes that we had set up to playtest in, so I always missed it. It's not the only way my playtests failed. My systems were so many and so convoluted that players just couldn't experience the whole game because they struggled or just died, ran out of time, didn't know why they died. With so many mechanics and with so little feedback in the prototype stages, it was impossible for someone to work out what was going on and to succeed. So in the future, my prototypes will be just core systems. For example, I've got nest building, like gathering energy, and before you do that, I've got evolving to a different bird depending on what you feed the nest. That's like 4 cool systems. I should have just started with somewhere in the middle, like a vertical slice, perhaps an existing nest in the scene, and you just pick things up and drop them into it and get some kind of feedback. If I could make that fun, because that's the majority of the gameplay, and if I could make that communicate what's going on to the players, I could just add the start and the end of that loop, you know, the building and the evolving. I could tack that on to either side, really, by putting all the systems in and then stressing out about the lack of feedback. I was so overwhelmed by how many particle effects and sounds and animations I had to set up. Another big problem was misinterpreting documentation. I was really slack with documentation. Like I said, I was not organized at all in this project. Really slack with task tracking and updating. And so I'd have an outdated task in the task tracker that Jacob would do, even though I thought we were on the same page because of a conversation we had in person, which contradicted that task. In week one, when I did like the presentation and this feature spec document, which has been cut completely and written twice based on pivots. Also, after the first time, there was a lot of confusion. Jacob didn't understand how a lot of things went together because he still kind of had the old ideas in his head, and so I really had to explicitly say, like, forget everything. I'm going to backspace it all and write it again, just the stuff that we really need to focus on. I think that's all that confusion was also due to the fact that, yeah, in week one, I asked Jacob to do the TSD based on the FSD. And this has been added to a lot, but if I could do it again, I would totally just write something in between an FSD and a TSD, something that Jacob could build in Unity with, and then I could just leave him do all that technical stuff, because that's all he wants to do. He did not like doing the documentation, which is cool. I just thought if he can adapt the TSD based on my FSD, it means we're both on the same page before we start scripting. But so we kind of butted heads about that a bit, because he thought we should just prototype it, we should just script it, see if it's good. He didn't say that explicitly, but that was his idea. Let's make something and then tweak it. Maybe that would have been less stressful for me, because in the last week or two, it was basically just looking at the gameplay we had in Unity in the editor and me referencing the documentation and just fleshing out what it is and why we want to do it, and why it needs to be changed. So you don't have to, like, as a designer working with a programmer, you don't have to do all the documentation. It just would have worked better for me this time, I think, and it's just something you got to consider. You don't have to go, you're doing the TSD, you're doing the FSD. People work differently. I love documentation. I try and make things as clear as I can for myself in documentation. Often I don't need to come back to it because I just flesh out such a good idea about how to do all the technical stuff in the first place. I get to and do it, and then I'm just tweaking stuff in the editor. So I wrote this dev diary last week. I made a few little tweaks that made a huge difference in terms of communicating the systems in the game. For example, the interactable objects now glow the color of the, a similar color to the bird that they're going to evolve to if you feed the nest that colored object. The players don't know that when they first see it. It's just this intriguing glow. They see patterns, they see certain objects have this color and other objects have this color, but watching players at the expo last night, it was it seemed very easy for people to figure out that the things that were glowing red were heavy because they were falling when they tried to grab them and hold them. And when players made the strong bird, that has more of an add force, and so like a heavy item when joined to the bird via spring joint, it doesn't move it as much. It doesn't, as a percentage, the mass of the thing attached to the spring joint isn't affecting the strong bird as much, because the strong bird has more add force. And players figured that out. When a player fed the nest a few fish and they made the fast bird, this blue one in the middle, they said out loud, like, I wonder what that red thing's going to make if I feed the nest that red thing, and that was really exciting. So just that one little change I put in with the idea of saying, hey, this is an interactable thing, come look at me, that really helped players get a hint of what the systems were about, and it wasn't so obvious that it spelled it out to them, and so they were really proud of um, their ponderings and their experimentation in regards to that. So I think that really worked, and I'm going to continue thinking about simple visual and audio feedback that helps hint at a system but don't necessarily spell it all out. Another small change that helped players care about the nest, which was originally just this weird gem-like structure, was asking Cat to animate this little bird fetus thing. I hated using that word. I even had to look up the spelling. So that was a funny conversation on Discord. But yes, players that had a look at the nest and saw this wiggling little creature inside were obviously more invested in finding food and dropping it on the nest. And it succeeded in doing the thing I needed to do, and that was make people more invested in the maintenance of the nest. Like I said before, doing this gameplay diagram was really helpful for me, and I mean, something like this became the basis of like a little instruction sheet that I put into the game, which I'll bring up now. So I just put that in the help menu, and when people were struggling, I just let them know that there was a help menu that they could check out. And I was hoping that this was vague enough for them to be proud of themselves when they figured out what it all means exactly. And I think I did well because the couple of people that thought to look at the help menu seemed to know what was going on immediately after. And they were still smiling and playing for way too long. I had the water rising to the top of the world so that there was nowhere to build a nest in 1,000 seconds, which I think was too long. In the future, debug everything in your game so that when you're in an expo, you can just come up and hit a button combination and you can speed up how high the water rises, or how fast it rises. In mine, I spawned fish and gave the player energy, just in case someone wanted to watch the gameplay but they didn't want to sit down and play. So that was very helpful for me to talk through it and then just hit the button to maximize the energy and then hit the button to build a nest. So debug commands, you're going to use them when you're prototyping the game. Just keep them in for an expo. Just make sure they're a key combination that's not easy to accidentally hit. So I was feeling really burnt out this week and last, but I think it's mostly due to my own poor project management this trimester. And I'm also like feeling the crunch and just like stress of simulated studio work. I'm a little scared of working in the industry, I guess, because I'm worried I'm going to be doing long hours and I'm going to be under pressure and I'm just going to break. I mean, the infamous game dev crunch. I mean, it's very real. And there's still a lot of studios that think it's okay. But reading blog series like Sarah Kayson's, which I've reflected on here in my Human Project Plans blog, has been really good. I have renewed faith that there are good people out there. Sarah is the project manager and producer of Midnight Hub. That was a bird. Sorry. Midnight Hub is a small indie studio in Sweden. They're making a game called Lake Ridden, and Sarah's running things really well by the looks of it. She's really looking after the mental well-being of the whole team, and so they're doing really well with no overtime. Yeah, Sarah's got a whole bunch of awesome tips, so go check out that blog, which I've linked here at the top of mine. If I didn't mention it earlier, sharing images of your work on Discord with your team is incredibly inspiring. You just have to ask what people are up to, and sometimes I'll just respond with a screenshot of whatever it is they're doing, and it can be really inspiring to see real stuff happening with the rest of the team. And so in the future, that will be a regular thing to ask how people are doing, both mentally and like in regards to the work, to rate everyone's stress, and to just remind people that it's like not the end of the world if they've got to move their commitments. I had a conversation in person with one of my animators that burnt out a little bit as well this trimester, and they were just stressed about delivering as much as they said they wanted to deliver, and I just spelled it out to them that any little thing is going to be awesome, and the stuff that they did was really awesome, and I'm not sure, but perhaps if I didn't have that conversation about how it's not a big deal, about how mental health is super important, perhaps the downscope and the delivery wouldn't have happened. So that needs to continue for sure. Another thing that went okay, I think, I printed out heaps of business cards and put them in front of my laptop, which had Space Existential at the expo last night, as well as a desktop computer that had Nest on it. And all of the business cards were gone. I don't know what the deal is there. I didn't hand out, actually I handed out one, but yeah, the rest were just sitting in front of my computer and they were taken. I'm hoping kids didn't take them just because they had this pretty picture on one side. But I have got a bit of traffic on the website, which is pretty cool. So maybe people are watching, and I should act like that. Most of these videos I record, I'm just assuming my lecturer is watching them, but I need to change that. I need to start, I guess, reaching out and letting people know that I want to work in a team, I want to do big things, and I want to get better. So I just want to end this video with some gameplay of the final version. Just in case there's anything important I forgot to mention, I'll go through things I'm really happy with and things I'm going to do differently next time. So starting with, I don't think I've written this anywhere, but this menu here is a totally different GUI object to the menu in the game. So any changes I made to the menu in the game, which is pretty much the same as this, I had to mirror here, so I doubled my work. So that was really silly. If you're going to have a menu, it should be one. This is the prefab, I think. This is that instruction sheet, which looks like absolute crap in the game, I think, but it seems to have worked. So, I mean, I almost didn't put this in because I was running late and I thought it looked like crap anyway, but it did the job, so there's an important lesson in that, I think. Control's not working. I'm just going to replay this. If in doubt, restart Unity. There we go. So I had text tutorial prompts halfway through because people just couldn't figure anything out. All my fault. I've since removed them, and if we interact with this, which I put directly in front of the player spawn, we're going to get full energy, and we're going to be able to build. And this prompt to build just stays as long as you have full energy. I've also, with Jacob's help, made sure that this thing only draws at the maximum distance, because a lot of people would look at something from afar, and I draw this preview, and they would think it was just a bad object to draw on, or sorry, build on. But that's really helped people work out where you can plant, I mean build. It changes its rotation when the hit location is good, but it's going to stay great if the steepness is bad, which is something Jacob really wanted to do. It's not something we talked about, but it is really clever and it looks cool. It is funny when people plant things sideways like this and they struggle to drop things on it, so they build up speed and let go and launch things towards it. So I have tried to communicate colors by matching. So I've tried to communicate systems by matching colors to the mechanic that they have something to do with. For example, move away from the nest, my health is going down. We can see that in the purple ring up the top left. And so when my health is going up when I rest in the nest, I have a purple particle effect that loops. One big tweak I've done is to ensure that you cannot consume and gather more energy to make enough nest while you have a nest that's alive. I'm lacking more feedback, but the system's there, so if we try and hold X to consume this thing, it's supposed to do nothing, but I just realized I haven't pulled the latest version. So just ignore that. I put a lot of work into tweaking how grabbing works. I'm really happy that Jacob was on board the idea of building spring joints and playing around with Unity physics, because it feels really good to have the thing move around instead of just make a kinematic child. What am I doing? I'm going to debug this. I'm just going to spawn some fish above the nest there. Great, I'm testing on a really buggy version because I've got full energy, I can't interact with the nest. Things like this have been really common when we pull the repo on different computers with different versions of Unity. And it's probably just a tag change in a prefab. It's probably just a public string on a script attached to a prefab that's retaining its old values. Oh, another last minute change. I have, let's get the mouse up. I have swapped that DNA icon out here for a picture of the nest, so that after the first time a player manages to build the nest, the relationship between that icon and building a nest is clear. Thank you, Brendan, for that straightforward tip that I failed to implement for so long. So anyway, sorry about the super buggy version, but there's heaps of lack of feedback right there, but that's my spaghetti code. And you might notice now that there's the player's on low health and their skull, the bird skull icon at the top, is flashing. That was not enough feedback. Still, a lot of people didn't know why they died. After the first or second time, some people guessed at it being a timer and said something like that out loud, but I needed more. Like, I needed GUI animation that pulsated the color and the size of that whole bar. Don't make it subtle. Like, have a full screen, like, bleed effect. That works really well. Anyway, check the latest version on my itch page, because that should be working fine. And if you've got any comments, please share. I'm really interested to hear about how I could improve Nest, because it's become quite a passion project, surprisingly.